Alright, let's fire this up. We got the SSDlux axles that we're going to build today. These are the new sporty axles that we've come out with. I've got a front and a rear that I'm going to do here. We're actually going to start out with the rear. So this is how you're going to get them. You're going to get them in these packages. And I just wanted to take one out of the package for myself because I haven't even shipped any to you guys yet. So I'm going to take one out of the package myself and see if I'm missing any screws or bearings or whatever. So you have to bear with me if I forget something, but hopefully it's all there. So let's start out with the rear. So we got your housing, your center section, got your Vanquish gears, got a truss with the spacers in it, got your rear hubs, got your rear axle shafts, and then you got a hardware package. It's going to have all your bearings and your hardware and all the small parts in there. And then you got your tubes. The tubes will have bearings in them also. So these will have the tube shock mount. These are a little tight, but then you'll have the bearing in there too. So make sure you got the bearings in there. Like I just said, this is all pretty hard actually to get all the parts together. Make sure they're 100% right. I mean, it's easy to forget a screw or put this together, you forget to put the bearings in the lockouts. It doesn't look like much, but man, it can really be detailed. There's a lot of parts in here. So first thing we're going to do, you want to have your tools together too. You want to have like a 2mm driver. You want to have a drill, tap. For all the holes that we're going to be making, you want a 39 drill, which is a 098. So have one of those. A pair of calipers is nice if you've got a set. If you don't have a set, go buy a super cheap pair at Harbor Freight for $10 or whatever they cost. We're not really running parts, as far as you're concerned, we're not really running parts that are that critical that you'd need a really nice set of calipers, even though they're nice to have. If you're off a couple thousands, it's not a big deal. So anyway, let's break into this. We're going to get into this center section. This is the hardware for that center section. The only thing we're going to use for these, we're going to use the screws that attach the third member to the center section. So it'll be these 4 screws. So just throw those to the side for now. And then grab our tubes. And then this is a centered rear. So it's not going to matter which tube goes in which side, since they're the same. If you're offset though, make sure you're gonna figure out if you want the short side on this side or if you want the short side on this side, the long side, vice versa. You can put the diff. If this was a short side and this was a long side, you can put the diff on this side, or you can put the diff on this side, and you can move this diff on side to side. So diff can move side to side. The pinion can go up, pinion can go down. It's a pretty versatile little setup. So let's go ahead and let's just push these tubes in there. Tubes should be tight. You shouldn't need a hammer or anything like that. Just a nice good fit. You can take the lockouts off if you want. Take the shock mounts off if you want. So just make sure that's in there, nice and good. So shoot, looks like we're already halfway done, doesn't it? Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this stuff off. We've got this truss that's going to mount on top of here, so we want this gone. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that now, and I'll be back. You just want to cut this off with a Dremel, a sander, I mean just anything to cut this stuff off and make it flush. And I'll be back in 2 seconds to show you how I did that. Alright, so here's what I got. It's all cut off. I just took a I took an angle grinder actually with a cut-off wheel and I just cut it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make this the bottom, because it's going to get scratched up and whatnot and on the rocks. And then since you've still got this good piece here, let's make this the top. Let's keep it looking fresh. So now that you got tubes, you got a center section, let's go straight for the truss. What we're going to do here is we're going to mount this truss to this housing. And so you want the piece here with the solid to the back, which is this part here. So you're going to have it going to the back, and then this piece goes to the front. Oops, I was going to grab my screws out of my bin, but I got to make sure I use these screws. So we're going to take, I believe this is a 12 millimeter. Let me look. Yeah, this will be a 12 millimeter. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Let's put this truss together a little bit first. So we're going to take 6 millimeter screw, and then in this hole here, this bottom hole, we're going to put a truss spacer in there. So put your 6 millimeter screw in there, and then just spin this guy on, just like that. And we're going to do that for a couple others too. So put your 6 mil screws in here, spin on with your fingers. And we're just going to go down the line. We're going to put the top link mount screws in. Just do these nice and loose. You don't want to tighten these up yet, especially these guys, because you're going to have to align these holes. And if you get too crazy right now, it's going to make it harder later on. So these are the screws we're going to put in. You got the two furthest out, and then you got these two in here, the bottom one and the two top ones. You might get a little confused in here, so take a good look. There's 3 speed holes off to the, what is that? That's going to be your left, and then the 2 big ones to your right. So make sure you put them in the right holes. Then we'll just take this one. These are all 6 mil screws, every one of these. Get your 2 mil driver. And we're just gonna attach this one real quick. These rear axles, they go pretty quick. They're not too hard to install at all. And on this side, like I said, you're going to want to leave a couple of them loose, you know, because like this one's not lined up. So you got to leave them a little loose so you can do this and move them around. This one's way far off. If you tighten that one up, you'd have been in trouble. Not in trouble, but you know what I mean. You would have had to loosen them up is all. Let's see. I think I'm missing a 6 mil screw. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I should have 14. I did 16. So I don't know why I'm short on this one. So sorry. Hopefully you guys don't get one that's short screw too. Alright, so then when you got the truss like this, you got to remember that the truss will go like this, so the opening here has an opening here. What we've got to do now is we're going to have to drill this hole to mount this truss, and we're going to have to make this centered and perfect, which sounds pretty hard, but it's not that hard. And I'll show you why. So if you got a razor blade, see if you can see this. So there's a casting line. There's this real thin casting line that runs this direction. So that's going to tell you what the center is in this way. And then what we're going to do is there's this little bump in here, and that's center. So what I do is I just take a little razor blade and I just score it a little bit, mark center, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up, and then I'm going to score it again. So now I have an X. And the X marks the spot. That's what we're going to want to drill. So you're going to want to drill a, just use an 1/8 inch bit, like a 125 bit. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be crazy, just go right for center. So, you know, used a smaller bit to start out. The smaller bit you use, a little more accurate you're going to be. Finish it off with the 1/8 inch bit. And then you got to look in here. You got this ridge in here. If you drilled and it hit that ridge and it went this way or went this way, when you put your screw in, it's going to keep that same direction. So if you missed this bump, you're going to want to get in here with a Dremel, with a sanding drum, and you're just going to get rid of this so your screw and your nut will sit right. But what we're going to want to do, it looks like an 8mm too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I put another 8 in instead of a 12. So I'm going to have to go through those kits one more time. I'm missing a 6mm and I was missing a 12mm. It's funny, you make a list for all this stuff to make sure it's all legit. You follow a list and then you don't get it right for some reason. I don't understand how that happens. Okay, so you put your nut in there, hold it. If you already put this truss spacer in like I did, it's fine because you can still get to it as long as your driver's not too big to get in there. So let's tighten this guy down pretty good. So what that's going to do is that's going to center your truss in both directions. So hopefully you guys can bear with me here. I think this is like the 3rd one I've set up, so not really 100% on my procedures yet, but we'll work through it. And what we want to do is we want to drill and, well, we're not going to tap, we want to drill and thread all these holes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to visually line this up. If you're off a little bit, hopefully you can see this. I mean, it's pretty easy to see. You look at top and bottom and you're not square. So you can look at your top and bottom, look at this point, look at this point. And when they're square, go ahead and we'll drill it in. Your eyeball is pretty accurate. So again, this is your 039 drill. I'm sorry, not your 039, your number 39, which is a 098 drill. So we're just going to do bang, bang like that. And then I don't tap these at all. I let the screw do the work. And these are going to be a 8mm long button head. You don't want to go shorter because it won't be good on the Delrin. You don't want to go longer because it's going to hit the axle shaft. So I'm not gonna go super tight. All I do is I just draw that in, and then I finish off with my driver because I can feel what the driver's doing. That thing can be so strong sometimes that I can't feel what it's doing. So we're going to do the same on this side. And when you do the drilling and putting the screws in, I go on the outsides first because I know that's where my alignment comes from. And then when I switch to the inner ones, my alignment's already done, if that makes sense. sometimes when you put those screws in, like I did just there, you can kind of pull it off a little bit. Like, so if I might have drilled the screw in, or drove the screw in like this, I just kind of pulled it. If that happens, let's just move to the middle ones, and they'll pull it back in. So I took that one out because it pulled it a little bit. I'm going to put this one in. So that's nice and square now. So now let's go back and put this one in. Screws are still nice and tight. Kind of fixed that problem where it was not square. And that's it. That's how the truss goes on. Really simple, right? So now, what I probably should have done before I put the truss on even, is let's just go ahead and set these set screws for the tube to center section housing. It's not a big deal. I can do it now. Just drill the holes. Okay, and then for these screws, we're going to use the 6mm set screws. So what we're going to do is start drilling these in. But what I like to do, I like to take my axle shafts. I just want to put the axle shafts in the housing. Probably have a little bit of debris in there from the drilling. So just clean that out a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'll get these started, and then after I've got them started, I'm just going to kind of drill or put that screw in until I can feel it. I can feel it hit that shaft. So I can't pull this shaft anymore. So what I'm going to do is just loosen this up, loosen that up until I can move the shaft. And then that's how I know that's where the depth should be on that set screw. So I'm going to do that for every hole. So it's too tight. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so all three holes are in, and it just got a little gritty. I think one of my screws might be a little too tight. There we go. That's good. And then just something to keep in mind. I'm not even going to do it on these axles, but keep an eye on these tube to center section connections. If they start getting a little wobbly, it might be a good idea to throw another screw right back here. So you could drill and put another set screw back here if you're having problems, if they're rotating or pulling or moving or whatever. Like I say, I don't anticipate it being a problem, or I'd just do it right now. But never know over the term of these axles what'll happen. Things might loosen it up, you know. You never know. So just something to keep in mind. We'll do this side over here. Oh, I already drilled the holes. This one's gonna mess with me because my drill won't go through that hole. So I shouldn't have put that truss spacer in hindsight. Not a huge deal, but probably makes it easier if I put it in later. We'll see if I can learn that lesson on the front truss when I do it. Careful not to go crazy with that drill and put those set screws in too far right away, because you can strip the donor out. So if you're in doubt, just do it the whole time with this driver. Don't even use that drill. So that's that. We've got the truss and the tubes fully assembled. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to align these. Align those two truss holes, and then with the screw in there like I've got it, I'm going to tighten them ring up a bit. This truss is basically done, so we just got to install the gears and the shafts, put the shock mounts and the lockouts on. This thing's done. I say it goes super quick, and since you don't have any steering or anything like that, it can be really quick and easy. So I'm just going to leave this upper link mount screw in there, and we'll deal with that later. So let's put the shock mounts on. The shock mounts have this little divot in here, or they have a straight edge. So just make sure you put them on the same side to side. It doesn't really matter, it's just kind of a preference. You know, if you want the rocks to have like that little smooth transition, would rather have them have more clearance kind of idea and have a little bump. I think I kind of like this little smooth transition like this, so that's how I'm going to install these. And then the other side's got to be the same, right? A lot of times somebody will put the smooth transition here, but then I'll have the bump side on that side, and that can obviously be a problem. So what we're going to do here is, this is where you want to grab your spool and your locker. I'm a little bit short on parts, and I need to send this out new in the package. So I have a spool, locker, and ring gear already assembled here. You know, hopefully you can figure this out. It's really easy. You just got the 3 screws on the ring gear that go to the spool. Just put those screws in, those three screws in, and you're good to go. The thing I found out when I've been putting these lockers together is be careful when you're putting these screws in. Not most all of them I've had, the threads don't really feel good, so it's kind of like cross threading, but you don't know because it's like a really small 2mm screw. So you're thinking, am I stripping it? Am I cross threading it? Are the holes no good? Like, you don't have any idea. So they just feel kind of gritty and choppy. But be kind of careful if you can, because I've kind of been putting one in thinking like, okay, I think it's just bad threads, and then the screws broke on me. There's just these tiny 2mm screws. So try to be careful with those. Make sure you're putting the screws in proper. Anyway, that's just the 3 screws. Put those things in there. Pretty easy. Put these are 7 by 14 open bearings. It's a interesting choice of bearings in my opinion. I don't know why they couldn't do a 10 by 15 like traditional. Whatever. So just put your bearings on there. Then you got to figure out which side you want your ring gear on. You want it this side. You want it that side. It just depends. I'll leave that up to you because I don't you know, it's just gonna be a personal thing. You also got to figure out, do you want this to be high pinion or do you want it to be low pinion? You know, we'll just put this one over here. We'll go to the low pinion. So you want to put this is what? This is a 5 by 14 by 5 bearing. Put that guy in there. 5 by 11 by 4 bearing there. Slip your pinion in there. And then this can be kind of tricky. So we're going to put this in. But this, because that truss screw can get in the way sometimes. So this one's just going to go right in. This one's fine. But sometimes there can be a little interference here. If there is, just take the Dremel and just take a touch off. I think it's when you do a low pinion. I think the lips are a little different. So you might have to take a little bit off if you're doing a low pinion. I'm not 100% positive because I haven't put enough of these together, but just beware that could be an issue. It's just a tiny bit of Dremel that you got to take off there. So that's how the gears go in. They're really simple. And then when you're putting the shafts in, I'm making these shafts. I've got another spool here. We'll see how this goes. So I'm not bashing anybody here. Let's be clear about that. But the slots on these can change. And it's not a huge deal except for they change how the fitment feels. So you can put these in and they can be sloppy on one, and then you can put one in and there'll be a press fit on the other one. And it's the same exact shaft, it's just the locker's different. So I've made these to be a tight fit on the average fit of the hole. So if your locker ends up being sloppy, your shaft's going to be a little bit sloppy. And if your locker's a little bit tight, your shaft's going to be a little bit tight. I mean, hopefully you can understand there's not a whole lot I can do about that. Sometimes you can even take the shaft though and you can be like, wow, that's sloppy. And you'd be like, holy crap, that's a tight fit. So it's just the way it goes. There's tolerances and everything. Like I said, I'm not bashing a company. My stuff has tolerances too. You know, that's why I like to make things really tight. Because if you make things tight, you can always trim them down to make them fit better. But if they're loose, it's good luck. That's just the way it goes. So anyway, we'll see that one. This one's that's a pretty good fit. I like it. Seeing that it's just loose on that side. Well, loose according to my standards. This one's easier to see. Pretty loose, tighter. So that's actually, since there was a difference there, that's gonna be my shafts. So there's gonna be a difference in some shafts. There's gonna be a difference in some lockers. It's just, man, it's just dealing with being perfect, which is really hard to do. So anyway, I just want to explain that some of these can fit really tight, some of these can fit really loose. So what we're going to do is we're just going to see how this one fits. You can look down on the end, you can see where that slot is. See, and I like my fit like that, where I have to slam them in a little bit. And now I can't see my slot because it's dark down there. So you gotta kind of feel it out. Sometimes you can take that third member out and kind of look in there. I think that's it. I think I might have to tap that one home. Give me just a second. So I had to tap that one in with a hammer, which I like those kinds of fits. I like the hammer fit, because what will happen is you're going to use these shafts, and after a couple packs everything loosens up, and next thing you know that'll be a perfect fit instead of a really tight fit. So if you start out with a really good fit, then it turns into a loose fit. Everything always breaks in. That's just the way things happen. So I much prefer to have the really tight fit from the start. Annoyingly tight fit is what I use on everything in mine. So we're gonna take our lock out. Remember the bearings in there, and this is the 8mm setup. So if you have Vanquish shafts, your bearing's gonna be a 5x12, and it's just the same thing, right? These obviously are too small, but you put those in, just slide the lock out on it. The Vanquish stuff's exactly the same. Oops. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our 8mm stub shaft in there with the lockout bearing. The bearing should be tight in there. So just pull that thing tight, and then line up the ears on this dog bone with the ears of this cup. So you can even go like this if you want to start it out, and then you can slide it on. Try. I think these ears are a little bit too big, so I'm gonna have to grind those down. Let's see if this side fits. I think both of these. Yeah, that's a pretty tight fit. It should be 472, and it's 468 on that one. And that one's 471. So they fit, but they're a little bit tighter than I want them. You could probably just put them in and then it would clearance the donor in, but since we're going through it, let's go through it. I'm just going to take these and just trim those ears just a little bit more on those. I mean, we're talking they would fit, so I'm going to take off probably like 10 thousandths, which if you could see, that's 10 thousandths. I mean, it's just a hair. So let me do that real quick. Okay, what I probably should have had you done before you put the shafts in is just take the shafts, put them in there, and just spin them. And that'll tell you if those ears are too tight. So those are good now. So about 455. I might have to double check all those. 445. So double check all those. I'll take those down to like 450 next time. So let's put the shafts back in. I think my set screws might have been a little too tight. They might be hitting the shafts because that locker, I probably can pull them out of alignment a little bit. So let's back those screws off is what I'm going to do. Back those screws off. Yeah, I think that was part of the problem. Yeah, that was definitely part of the problem. Those screws were just hitting. So let's do this. Loosen those screws out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait and see when they contact now. There's some contact. There's some contact. There's some contact. There we go. Can't remember if I did this bottom one. There we go. Yep. So hopefully you guys can understand. I like I said, I haven't built a whole lot of these, so I'm still learning as we go. Learning little tricks here and there. So hopefully bad instructions are better than no instructions. So we'll get through it. So take that lock out. I'm going to push it on. Should be a nice tight fit. So double check it. It's on. Make sure you don't have any in and out slop this way or this way. And then make sure it still spins good. Same thing with this. It's kind of a nice setup. Doesn't have any slop at all. So I mean, you're looking, there's no rotational, no in and out, no back and forth. Like, it's just a pretty solid setup. So that'll be that. We can go ahead and throw this third member back in. Kind of make sure it turns good. If it's a little bit gritty, I would actually say that's preferred. Just because what I was just saying, like, everything's going to break in. So nothing drives me more crazy than a guy that gets his setup and he's like, it doesn't turn smoothly. And it's like, dude, if it turns smoothly when it's brand new, that means you've got a piece of crap, because when it breaks in, it's just going to be sloppy, super sloppy. So you want everything to actually be like gritty and kind of hard to turn when it's new. And then when you burn like 1 or 2 packs through that thing, man, that thing will then be smooth. That thing will then be bind free. That's how you want it. It's like I said, it's no different than like having a car or a truck and you put a ring and pinion in it. Like, you got to drive slow on that thing because it's binding. It's too tight. And once you drive on it and they like, what's the word I'm looking for? They like mold together. They become one with each other and they become a match set. So it's the same thing with gears. It's the same thing with axles. Everything. You want everything to just like be too tight and then just be made for each other when they're all built. Hopefully that makes sense. I go through it too much, so I'm a little bit sensitive and emo about it. We've got rear axle here. We're almost done. I guess let's throw the hubs on. Seems like a logical next move to me. So these Delrin hubs, typically they just have this hole right here. So if we put that hole where the hole that the shaft is, got a little bit of gap, and that bothered me. I didn't like it. So what I did is I drilled another hole further back. So it gets rid of that gap, which makes me feel better about life. But kind of cool, because if this setup isn't wide enough for you, man, you got a free hub widener. Like, you just turn it, put it in that other hole, and now you're about, let's call it a 1/4 inch wider per side, so 1/2 inch overall wider. All for nothing. You just move the hubs out. So I kind of like the way that worked out, but we're going to set these up in the narrow version. So you're just going to put the hub on. You just got to find the hole. Get it a little bit tight. Make sure your set screw there at the end isn't stopping you from going through. And just push her in. Make sure your, kind of messed that up a little bit. The Delrin got crushed a little bit right there. There's like a burr on it. I don't know if you can see. Just, if you can see that, it's just covered in like a Delrin scrap, but make sure your pin goes all the way through. You probably see it from that angle a little bit better. So make sure the pin goes all the way through. If you only have it halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, it makes the hub a lot weaker. So then tighten your set screw down in the end there. This is a 5mm set screw, so a 2.5mm driver. And the pressure from that set screw puts it on the hub pin, and that's just a solid, ready to go axle right now. So let's do the same with this side. Oh, that pin went in a lot easier. Probably because I didn't have the set screw on the way. Usually they're so tight though, you have to put them into pliers like that. So there you go. That's it. And then we'll, the only thing left on this guy is to set the shock on link mounts. Super easy compared to the ones that I've done. We're going to save that for a minute though, because we'll do the front with it. But that is a complete, oh I'm sorry. The only other thing we've got left is we've got to do the third member. So that's when you're getting into your package here. That came with the SSD center. So you don't want these long 2mm screws. I think it's a 2mm driver. So we'll put these in. So don't do these tight. I just use that drill just to get them in 90% of the way. So once they're 90% in, tighten them by hand so you can feel what you're doing. I'm not used to this plastic. I haven't dealt with it obviously, but I'm going to take it easy on it. I'm not going to stress it and tighten things down too much. That feels good to me. Feels pretty smooth. Little notchy. I think you can hear it. Little notchy. That's in reverse. I don't know if that's the way it's supposed to be, but that'll work good. Reverse, it might be pulling that pinion back in, is what the problem is. Which if it pulls the pinion back in, which I mean like the pinion slams this way, you can see there's a little bit of movement in that. If you go in reverse and it pulls it in this way, that means it's going to make the mesh tighter. See if I can pull it out to prove that theory. I mean, it's smooth when you do that. Yeah, see, I hold it out and it's smooth. So, if you ever have that problem, and it's getting gritty in reverse, when you put your drive shaft on, if you've got a gap right here, you want to put a shim in between there so that pinion can't suck back in like that. If you want to always hold it out, then it'll hold that gear mesh better. Like I say, it's only if you have a problem though. So there we go. The rest of these screws are, I don't know, put them in your toolbox or something. You don't need them. They're for the SSD stuff. The only thing you should have left over from what I sent you would be these 4 6mm set screws. I guess I didn't think about that. We can do those real quick. Those are just for the lockouts, and they're not waiting for to be set up. So I just lay the axle on its back, and then I'm going to pop a hole there. Give yourself enough space here. There's no reason, there's a lot of engagement on these axles, so there's not a big reason to get too close to your edge. Give yourself some room. So do it front and back. And we're just going to go flush. Don't go any deeper, don't go any less. Just nice and flush on there. It's a perfect size. Make sure everything still turns. I say don't trick yourself if you go backwards. See how it sounds gritty? Just go forwards. Nice and smooth. Okay, I'm not joking this time, we're done. Except for the shock mounts, which we'll get to in a minute. So let's set this aside. Welcome to the front axle. Let's open it up, see what we got. Alright, we got our gear set, and then this one doesn't have the spool. Like I told you when I was doing the rear, I'm a little short on parts, so I've got a spool. But you'll have a gear and a spool not showing, center section, front truss, axle shafts, aluminum tubes with shock mounts, chubs, steering links, and then you got 2 bags of hardware. Pay attention. So these bags of hardware are separated for a reason. And the reason for this is these little screws here, these are a 3x5 millimeter. So they're really hard to tell the difference between a 3x5 and a 3x6. So you don't want to run a 3x6 in the chubs because you'll contact the shaft. Got to run a 3x5. Do not get them mixed up. Don't even open this bag, in my opinion, until you're ready to go to set the chubs up. So, set the steering aside. We're not going to need that for a bit. Let's open up on the center section. So this is these are screws. The only thing you're going to use from these again are the 4 screws to hold the third member in the center section. So set those aside right now. There's our center section. Okay, and then we're gonna put the shafts aside and the truss aside right now. We're not gonna deal with those quite yet. What we're gonna do is we're gonna address this top link mount like I did on the rear. So basically gonna chop it off and we want to make it look like the bottom. So I'm gonna cut this off and I'll be right back. Alright, I chopped her off. So it's all gone, same as the bottom. If you're some sort of cowboy who likes to party hard, might even just leave extra material on there so you can get more life out of these centers. Or if you're the type of guy that's super easy on parts, might even want to shave it a little bit more for some clearance. I don't know. There's some options on there, but it's not a huge deal. These center sections are pretty cheap. Can't remember what I'm buying them for. They're like, I don't know, 12 or 15 bucks is all these things cost, I think. So if you destroy one of these, end of the world is not there. So what we got there is we got that center section, and just like the rear, this is now going to be the bottom of the housing because it's already scratched because I just ground on it. So since the rocks are going to hit it, I'll leave that at the bottom. But then you got a perfectly good, shiny bottom that's now the top. So this is what I'm going to make the top. And if you didn't watch the first part of the video, I'll go through all this again. So sorry for boring you guys that already saw this. But there's a line, casting line right here, and that casting line marks the center of these 2 spots, and that's what we're gonna drill for in the truss. But what I'm gonna do is I just mark the center with my razor blade. I score it, according to this little bump in here, because that's also the center. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, I'm going to bring it all the way back. I'm going to make this line, and then our X marks the spot there. So we're just going to shoot for the very center of what I just did. See if I screwed it up. Yeah, I'm getting lucky. So like on the last video, or on the rear axle, I did the same thing. I was able to drill directly in the center of that little bump in there, which is what you want to do, but I was hoping to actually screw it up so I could show you guys how to fix it. If you don't get in the center of that bump, when you put the nut on there, it's going to kick off to the side of the side. So you just take a Dremel and you just shave that off in there, because you want your screw to be square to the housing. So that hole actually needs to be 1/8 inch hole. I just start off with that smaller hole because it's a little more easy to be accurate. So there you go, there's your 1/8 inch hole. See if I learned any lessons from the rear axle. I think what we want to do is attach these tubes. We want to attach these tubes to the center section before we start with the truss. Oh, and on this, I screwed this up before, so this is kind of annoying. Make sure the shock mounts are on the tubes before you attach them or press them in, because what happens is these shock mounts will not install over the top of the chub, so it can kind of be annoying. Then just like the rear axle, you got to figure out what side do you want to be the diff to be on. You can put it on this side, or you can put it on this side, right? Which is the side I'm going to put it on. So you can put your diff on either side. Before you go pressing it in and setting it, make sure you know which side you want it to be on. These things should be nice and tight, which they are. So I don't know why I get mixed up on this diff. I keep wanting to put the third member on. I keep wanting this to be the front of the axle, but just keep in mind it's the rear. It's probably obvious to a lot of you folks. So again, this is your top, this is your front. So we got this set. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do 3 set screw holes on each side, and that'll set my tubes. So this is pretty easy. You just want to take your 39 drill bit, 098. We just want to drill some holes. The housing a nice blowout. Get all the shavings out of there. And then we actually want to tap these holes. So all I do, go nice and fast, is I'll just put the tap into my drill, and then just pay attention. You don't want to go all the way through. You just want to meet you just want to go to the center. So I can just look down that tube and I can see where my tap is at. Good enough. Good enough. tap all the aluminum shavings out of there. So all those holes are ready to go. We need to get into the hardware. We need to get our set screws out. These are a 3x6 set screw, and since they don't have anything to press against, such as like a button head, you know, the button head will press against here and create some pressure, and it'll kind of seat itself that way. I'm going to put Loctite on these so they don't go in and they don't go out. But what did we just learn while we were doing the rear axle? We need to learn some lessons. So we're going to actually put the gears in real quick. Because what I figured out on the rear axle is that you need to have the shafts in before you put those set screws in. So the gears, again, people didn't catch that. I don't have the gears to take out of the package, so whatever. And I don't know if it's important enough to take these screws off and install it again for you, but there's just 3 holes in here. Be careful. The screws are a little touchy. I don't know if the thread's a little weird or the screws are a little weird. Something's a little weird. It feels a little gritty going in. Don't force it too hard because you can break the screw off in there and then your spool's done. Not a huge deal, but it's annoying if you ruin that spool. So put your bearings on. Put your 3rd gear in there. Oh, shoot, your 3rd gear. Man, I'm tired. You guys are working me too hard. Put your frickin' ring gear in there, and then you can either put the pinion on high or you can put the pinion on low. So we're actually going to install this one low. Put that 5x14 in the diff. I guess I put the, yeah, I did the rear high, so we're going to do this one low. So put your 5x14 by 5 in that side, 5x11 by 4 in that side. Install your pinion. We're going to put it low. And then we need to put our shafts in. Hopefully this doesn't bite me, but I'm going to do this without chubs or knuckles. Maybe I am. Not wanting to find the slot. That side was easy. That's what I was saying. I forgot to say it on this video too, but well, I'll just take it out to see if that's the problem. I think sometimes these slots and these lockers, I just make I make these tangs to fit, I guess you'd call it normal size hole in the slot. So that one's pretty sloppy. That one's pretty sloppy too. And that one feels good. That one's a little sloppier. So this side's a little sloppier. That side's a little tighter. So tolerances can change on every single part, including mine. So just keep that in mind. I try to make them good. Too many people have complained about things being hard to install, so I've actually eased up and unfortunately have made things sloppier. I don't know why this one doesn't want to go in though. Well, shoot, didn't learn my lesson. That set screw was too tight, just like the rear. Okay. We're in. Okay, so this time, that shouldn't be a problem, because I'm going to put the shafts in, and then I'm going to put these set screws. I can tell when that set screw hits these with the aluminum. Since they're tapping aluminum, I can tell really well when they hit. So that one's good to go. We're just going to go through and we're going to do them all that way. When you're done, you can check to see it's still smooth. I would have done button heads. I think button head would be a little better piece of hardware for these. But the problem is these shafts are so big, and then the tubes are so small, and then additionally where they go into these center sections, the tubes are so small that you're not getting a ton of threads. So it's like you're stuck between, I think it was like what was that, like a 4 and a 5 mil button head is what it would have been. And if you used a 4, like you actually needed something, I mean, don't quote me on this, but you needed something like a 4.5 mil screw to be ideal. And if you went with 5, you're too long, you got into the shaft. If you went with 4, you were missing like a 1/2 mil, which you need 100% of your threads. So that's why I'm doing set screws. Hopefully the Loctite will do it. Like I said with the rear, if these ever start getting sloppy, they start moving, these set screws start moving, let's drill a hole right here where there isn't one. We're going to drill a hole here, and then we'll put set screws in there so you're captured on all 4 sides. And that should be the solution to any of those problems. At least in testing, that's what we did, and it's worked out good. Okay, so these set screws are in there. Let's take those shafts back out. Take the 3rd gear back out. We're going to take the spool back out. I'm still not positive this is the correct order of things, but it seems like it at this point. So we're going to put this truss on now. What we want to do, this one's a little bit easier than the rear. What we're going to want to do, this is still 6 mil. These are all 6 mil button heads. So 6 mil button head, twist on your truss spacer like that. And I'm actually going to skip these top ones, see if I learned anything from that last one. You got 3 servo mount holes, or what these are going to end up be. They're like a truss servo mount hole. So you've got them, I'm putting my truss on wrong even. It needs to go like this. Okay, I forgot to explain that part, but you've got this solid piece. So this one's cut out. This one's cut out, so this is going to go to the cutout side, and then this piece is solid, so it's going to go to the solid side. So it's going to sit like this. And what I was talking about is these are the servo mount holes. So you'll see when we get here, but it's these 3 holes are depending where you're going to want to mount your servo. If you want it further this way, you can do that. If you want it further this way, you can do that. In testing, we only had these holes over here, which kind of made it makes mounting shocks and links a little more difficult. But if you move it over here, it makes it so the servo horn has a little bit less room with the upper links. My guess is that I'm going to eventually end up just deleting these 2 over here, at least this one. I think 99% of people are going to use these inner holes. We'll test it out and let a couple of you guys put them together and see what you think, and I'll probably refine them later on when we figure that out. At least there's some adjustment though. But the thing is, and I'll show you this in a minute, is you don't want to set your truss holes just yet for that reason, because if you do, you're going to have holes in your tubes where you don't want them. So we're going to hopefully show you the right way to do this. The ones I've installed, I just went for it and I installed them on this inner hole. Got a little crazy. They worked out good though. Okay, so for right now, I've just got these 3 in here. Like I say, I went with the 2 inner holes, this hole. You'll have truss spacers up in these, but I'm gonna wait because it was kind of in the way on the rear one. So this will go like this, like I said, back to back, and this will be your 12 mil screw here. So you're gonna put your 12 mil screw in. I guess I didn't drill those holes good enough. The screw doesn't want to go in too good. Throw a nut on the inside. Hopefully that camera angle's good, because nothing worse than making a nice long video and you find out your camera angle is no good. I just jinxed myself. Hopefully not. Just tighten that guy up real good, and then these are the ones I was talking about. So ideally, you're going to want to drill and tap these screws in. The reason I'm not going to is because I'm going to show you a different way to do it, just to be safe. Yeah, so we'll leave these. Oh, and I installed those ones. You don't actually put button heads in here. I'm sorry. You guys probably all following along. You're like, God damn it, Dlux, I fucking put them already in there. Sorry. You want these 10 mil set screws are what goes in there. I owe you guys, what, like 45 seconds of your life? Sorry. Bill me. Alright, so we're going to put those set screws on there, and then you got the servo truss spacers. Don't get too crazy on tightening those things. So, I'm not going to do this now, but this is going to be how that's going to want to go on there. So you can see, having this truss all the way over, that's not a super long servo horn. So if you had a 1-inch long servo horn, it might be perfect to get in there. But if you move it over, I mean, you could put a giant servo horn on there and it doesn't matter. But then you're into this a little bit much. So, like I said, we'll just move it on this side for now. Okay. And then, let's see, what do we want to do next? Let's put those gears back in. And then, let's put chubs on. These chubs are the same situation. They'll all, I'll just leave that out. They're all going to change tolerances a little bit. I'm trying to make them tight. But same old, stuff can change, especially from brand to brand. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go tap these on with a rubber mallet. Alright, so a little tap of those things. You can see they're still, they're a good fit is what they are. So we're going to put the, you put the short, like your angle wants to be like this, your angle wants to be like that. So we're not going to set these chubs yet, but go ahead and put the shafts in. Make sure our gears are in. There we go. So chubs are on. We're not going to set the chubs yet. What we're going to do now is we're going to build the knuckles. I guess I didn't include the knuckles in the part of the included parts. So you're just going to have the knuckles, the knuckle centers, those are the knuckle bottoms, knuckle arms, and then since we're doing 8 degree on this, we're going to have the spacers. So this might be a good thing because on the build I did with my Berg, I built non-8 degree, and even though they're just a little bit different, people still don't understand how to do 8 degree. So at least I'll have a video of how to do that now. But what we're going to want to do is this is the front of the knuckle. The best way to tell which is the front is there's this little bearing relief back here. This is the back bottom. Okay, so if you can understand that, back bottom, we're going to want to put the bottom arms on, obviously. But we're going to put these spacers on under here because these chubs are taller than an AX10 chub. So another way to do this, actually, if this was my personal car, what I would do is I would actually grind the tops of these and the bottoms of these a little bit. The reason I do that is you don't have to use a spacer, and then the knuckle with the arms is not as tall, and so you can fit it in the wheels a little bit better. I think it's just a better way to go, but people get scared to modify some stuff. It's understandable. So do whatever you want to do. But since we're doing 8 degree, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do button head bottom, countersink top. That's the best way to remember it. And then if you were doing non-8 degree, you would want to run countersink on bottom, button head on top. So it's the opposite of what I'm doing here. You'll see what I mean a little bit better here right now. So you'll have these, and then I'm going to put these flathead screws, countersink, whatever you want to call them. I might have done what you're not supposed to do. I don't think these were that tight. You don't want to tighten any of these screws until you have them all in. Because if you do, it happens what just did. If you tighten one of these screws or two of these screws down, it can pitch it off so these other screws won't even fit, and you'll be like, why don't they're not lined up? They're not any good. And then I'm just going to tell you got to loosen them all up. And then once they're all loose, they're all lined up, now you can sink them in. So that's a done knuckle there. So you got the spacers, countersink, or the outside holes on the top arm, button head or the inside holes on the bottom. That's the opposite for non-8 degree. So like a AX10 chub, all the 8 degree Wraith chubs. So if your arms are pitched like this, that's 8 degree. If they're up and down like that, that's non-8 degree. So that one's good to go. Let's assemble these ones. These knuckles come with a 6mm long screw. And the reason I do that is because it'll fit with or without these spacers. But if you are running 8 degree stuff, that spacer takes up room obviously for the screw. So if you want, you can run a 8mm long screw instead of a 6mm long screw. Never have I heard anybody ripping their screws out of their knuckles, but I know some of you guys just like to feel better about everything. There we go, both knuckles are done. We're going to install them. On these new kingpin balls, I installed a screw into the knuckle ball first. Once you got those assembled, let's put the knuckles on the chubs. Sometimes I like to put these in by hand because they go at a weird angle, you know? And it's easy to start them in at the wrong angle. Some people are probably better off putting Loctite on these holes because they'll lose the ball and the screw. I'm more the type of guy, I don't know if that's in straight. I'm the type of guy that likes to check my screws, so I don't worry about it. And I hate taking apart crap that's been Loctited. So I check the balls. Those look good. I check the balls all the time. If not, put some red Loctite on there. If you never take your stuff apart, you might be better off that way anyway. And then some people, the chub will be too tall, even with the spacers, so they've got to take and they got to grind the chub a little bit. Honestly, as many knuckles as I've put together, I've never run across that problem. However, I know it's true because I hear about it all the time. So we're just going back to the same old discussion. Tolerances change, things change. Just keep in mind that you might have to grind the tops and bottoms of these to make these knuckles fit. mess with all this stuff later. Pretty much we need to set this servo to make sure it's in the right position, and then we need to set our caster, which will be these holes. One thing we can do right now is I like to set steering stops. I have these little spacers that I like to use. They're a 3mm spacer. The catch is you want to use the spacers that are correct for your car, not just the 3mm spacer like I'm using. The reason I'm just going with 3mm spacers is because I put these together too many times and I've seen that they work. But even though I know they work, I'm still going to show you how to check to make sure your steering stops are good. Because if you just blindly just put on what everybody else is putting on, you might have a steering stop that doesn't stop your steering when it needs to. And then what's the point? So you notice these steering stops are ridiculously easy. If you run my knuckles and you don't run steering stops, you're a fool. So there's this hole right there, a screw and a spacer, and you know, check your steering like I was just talking about. But that's the steering stop. If you try to use a servo to stop your steering, so many times, like if you roll off a cliff, you know, it can take over your servo. There's a lot of situations where your servo just doesn't have control like people think it does. So you want to have mechanical stops. But you'll notice I've got them in the front and I've got them in the rear. The reason you want to do that is you can be driving like this. If you only have a stop on the front here and you don't have them on the back, this rear can still cam over. I've shown it in another video. If you guys need help, you can get it in my Berg video, but you need to have them front and rear. It needs to stop them front and rear. There's too many situations where your knuckles can independently do what they want. Just either check out that video or you just have to trust me. So it stops on front and rear, and then the way we can check them, what we're going to do is we're going to spin the, oh, that's not going to work. We can spin the shafts. See, I can tell that's good. Tell that's good. And you know, if that side's good, this side should be good, but we'll just check anyway. It's a little gritty because that pinion's coming out. So it's good. You can check it and see. And I like to be conservative. The more you limit your steering angle, the longer your shafts will live, the longer your stuff will hold up. And in this case, it might not be the shafts that break, it might be you breaking your ring and pinion, because the shafts are strong enough that it's moving the weak point to the ring and pinion, or your transmission, or you know, there's a million things. So make sure your steering stops are set, please. Pretty please. Let's go ahead and let's put our steering together. So you got a 3/16 titanium tie rod, and then you've got a 1/8" titanium drag link. And then on the 1/8" titanium, I actually tap the threads to a 632 because I like the coarse pitch a little better. So to make life easier, I'll just tap the rod ends, because a 632 thread's so aggressive that it doesn't like to start in the rod end. So if you tap it a little bit, it'll get you started. threaded for the drag link. This is just a 4mm thread standard, so these Revo ends will go on the steering link fine. And then we're going to want to set our drag link up over here on top, and then our tie rod on bottom. So this is going to be your 20 mil screw on this side. And then for this other side, we're going to do a 16 mil, and it's going on the bottom. Everything's kind of a mess. Your chubs are flopping around and nothing's staying straight for you. First world problems. So we'll go over how the tie rod sits, but that'll be a good start. Tie rod and drag link like so. So let's see, what do we got left? We got the 2 truss mounts. We need to set our shock mounts. Let me tighten this up. So let's see, I think we've got all that stuff set in there, so let's just put these top mounts in. So these truss spacers are going to go, you can put these in any 3 of these positions. So why would I do 3 if you can just do any 3, right? Wheel. The way suspension geometry works, links geometry works, is the lower you place these spacers down in these holes, the, how do I put this, the less the axle will want to tuck up. I don't know if I can explain this. So if this is the chassis, if you have these up like all the way I have it, the more when you're on a climb it's going to want to pull up like this. If you have them down in these bottom holes, the more it's going to want to extend. So here's the thing that I constantly have to try to talk to people about. I think I'm the only guy in the world that believes this. Maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe it's wrong. But when I have a chassis and it's pulling up, I think people like that because it actually doesn't, well, it pulls the axle up. But what most people think is it's pulling the chassis down. But here's the problem is your chassis weighs, you know, whatever, a couple ounces. A Sporty is going to weigh more because it has a transmission and stuff. Let's just put a number on there and say 8 ounces. So if you're pulling down 8 ounces, there's a cause and effect to everything. So if you're pulling down 8 ounces, that means you're also pulling up 8 ounces. Just the way things got to work. But if you're extending and you're really pushing out and your chassis is riding really high in the front on climbs, that's actually pushing your car down, pushing traction down. It's pushing your chassis away. So nobody seems to want to understand that. Everybody wants to put their links like really high and dive them down and just get that axle to suck up. It makes it look cool. People feel better because the chassis doesn't look like it's going to constantly roll over. but I'm telling you, it doesn't work as good. After saying all that, Sporty's a little different because you do have that weight in the chassis. Figure it out for yourself. The higher you go up here, the more it's going to pull your axle up. The lower you go down here, the more it's going to push your chassis away. So the way I try to tell people to do it is when you're tuning this, stop looking at your car. Stop trying to figure out what your car is doing by looking at it. Go by results. Are you climbing better than you were before or not? Like that's basically how you got to look at it. If you're looking at your car and you're just feeling like uncomfortable and you're not confident, man, you got to get over that. This is all about results, right? We want to know if your car is making it up the hill better. In my opinion, most of the time when you push away, at least on an MOA, I'm not going to be so confident with the Sporty, but when you're pushing away like that, that's when you're going to find that your car is climbing like a beast. So that was a lot of information to put into a Sporty axle build. Obviously, you guys probably know me well enough to know that I like to go on stupid rants all the time, so you have to forgive me for that. Let's finish up putting this truss together. Before you tighten these up too much, let's throw this 35mm cap screw in there. Short a nut. So let's see, on this one I'm short a nut, and I'm going to be short 4 set screws for the shock mounts. Let me write that down. Should have been. Oh, that's the missing nut. I missed the nut inside the diff. That's why I didn't have it for there. Alright. Good thing I assembled these before sending them out. So now with this screw in here, I can now tighten these up. If not, the holes get a little bit crooked and you have a hard time assembling everything. Okay, so what we got? I got 2. I think I gave too many button heads on this too. But let's just move on. We just got to set the truss, shock mounts, and a caster in this, and we're good. Okay, so I'm going to call this one as good as the rear axle. Actually, let's put this third member in real quick. Just don't have to deal with it falling out all over the place. Like I said, I just drive these screws in with the driver because they're really long, and then tighten these by hand. Don't get too wild. I don't think that plastic's the best thing ever. Not that it's bad. I don't think the plastic's bad at all. Plastic is plastic. You got to be a little bit gentle with it, you know. If you're an ape like I am, you can usually destroy it. Okay, third member's in. So now what I want to do is I want to show you why I waited to set the shock mounts. Waited to set the shock mounts and I waited to set the caster. Those are the last things we got. Actually, that screw's not all the way in yet. There we go. That one looks good. Okay, so the reason I didn't do that is you want to set your shock mounts, your caster, while it's on the car. Especially on Sporties because they're really temperamental. So what I got here is I got the sucker punch 5th Dimension Sucker Punch. So if you guys want one of these, you got to get on Facebook, look for 5th Dimension, contact Dan Guy or Chris Boggs. They'll get you set up. The reason I went with this chassis is because it seems to be the hot ticket. It seems to be what everybody's going with right now. And I'm hoping that I can cover a lot of ground with a lot of people, with this being what I think is the most common sporty chassis. Hopefully you guys will see these axles set up on this, and it'll kind of help everybody out, if that makes any sense. It's a really weird way to say it. So what I'm going to do is, remember my shock mounts are loose on both, my caster's loose. So I'm going to assemble everything with all that in mind. So let's set up the upper link mounts first. So the upper link mounts, this is my center. This is the center. So we're going to put rod ends on both ends of these. They're going to pinch together right here. So there's extra space in here. So you got to put it like a Revo ball. So the easiest way to do that is just put that Revo ball on there, and then I'm going to put the rod end on. This is going to be, hold on. So this is going to be hair sloppy. The reason this is a hair sloppy is because this is made for 2 Revo balls. I've got these are called 1942 rod ends in here. I've got a 1942 rod end, and the width is different than a Revo ball. So that's why I've got slop. So I don't think that's a big deal, and I actually like slop on my links. The reason I like slop on my links is because it makes it like really loosey-goosey, just able to kind of move around at all times. If you have a really tight suspension, things just don't like to move when you're in like a wheel's in the air. You don't have a lot of pressure on the wheel, you know, something like that. Things just don't like to move so much. So I like slop. In fact, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll run the wrong size rod ball in here, so it'll slop back and forth a little bit that way. So to each their own. If you don't subscribe to that theory, then that's fine with me. So these screws that I'm about to install are not included. These will be, I use a 16 mil button heads on both of these, and you might actually want like an 18 mil is more ideal. I've been using 16 mils for, shoot man, I don't know how many years. Using them for years and years, and I've never had a problem. But the thread's a little bit short, to be honest with you. So if you're into actually having the nylock work and you're a little bit stressed out about that, get 18s. So did upper links first. We're going to do shocks now. And we're going to do lower links now. So these are all 16 mil. Sometimes holding all this kind of a pain. If you have a helper, that'd be really nice. I don't have a helper. I've got people that do the opposite of help. People that destroy and make life harder. A freaking dog that licks me 24/7. I don't know how that's helpful. Alright. That rear axle's on. don't mock my drive shafts, please. They're old, clapped out pieces of crap, but they're gonna get the point across here. So that's a rear axle she's on. And my shock mounts aren't set yet, but this is well, I'll wait, hold on. Let's get the front axle up in there first. Same thing, I'm going to install this upper links first. And then on the front, if you can't figure it out, this is going to be that's your center. So rod ends on both sides of that. So we'll put the Revo ball over there. So you guys can see. My table is not the largest table in the world. If I'm working on stuff by myself, not trying to run this camera, it's not too bad. But if I'm trying to show you guys something, it gets a little tight. I like to work this direction from top to bottom, because for some reason if I try to work from the bottom to the top, I always screw up my upper link mounts. My upper link mounts always end up like outside my shocks, or you know, just, yeah, come on, man, under my upper link, or under my lower link mounts, you know, something like that. Stay on there. I always just end up in the wrong spots, so I found if I do the upper links first, it's not a problem. Again, 16 mil. Everything's kind of a mess on this front end because it moves so much. If we figure out that that servo mount just needs to be all the way over, it seems like it'd be a lot easier, because I've got the thing flopping around all over the place right now. And when I've installed the other ones, it definitely was easier, because I didn't have that thing in the way all the time. You can see these link mounts are, the ones you get will be tighter. I never sent out ones that are this loose. But this is what I have made, and for me it's not a big deal. I know how to work with them. Kinda. I guess I'm messing around with them right now. They're kind of being a pain in the butt. But that's what I was talking about, having that extra hand in there to hold this is ideally where you want to be. There we go. Hopefully you don't have an annoying brood motor too. This motor is so obnoxious, it just picks up anything metal like it's just, I mean, the craziest magnets, those cobalt magnets. I guess he's going to start making those again. That's pretty cool. I love those motors. Alright, so this is what I wanted to show you. I got the cheeseburger in here, by the way, too. People are so afraid to put the cheeseburger in any chassis. I'm going to tell you, it works just fine in the 5th dimension sucker punch. I'm a little stressed right here. It doesn't fit, but that's because I'm not going to modify this plate. If you just ground this plate right here, hopefully that's in camera view. If you ground a little bit right there, that's going to bring this plate in. Zero modifications that had been done to this transmission to get this to fit. You ground that plate, and then also in here, if you just move these motor mounts, you move these screw holes over so it can move this way. You got plenty of room in here to move that trans over. So if I was running the sucker punch and these axles, no question would I run that cheeseburger. It's like they were made for each other. Okay. One of the first things you gotta do after I try to put the shaft together. This is gonna be kind of messed up because I would build this car a little bit different, but the point still remains. You're gonna want to look. I can't even, the shaft is just not. It's not supposed to go on here. The shaft's way too long, is what the problem is. The drive shaft. So I'm just trying to cluster this together just to show you what I'm talking about. I'll just leave it right here. How's that? It's not going to allow it to compress. So what I want to show you is the first thing you want to do is you want to get your pinion angles correct. That rear one's sweet, awesome. This front one, it would be about right there, which actually is not bad. It's pretty good, especially for being low pinion. If it was high pinion, it'd be even better, but that's pretty good. So that's the first thing you want to do with the Sporty is you want to address the pinion angles. If you don't like the pinion angles, what you're going to do is you're going to put longer rod ends on, and that'll pitch the drive shaft up. If your drive shaft's too far up, you want to put shorter rod ends on to bring it down. If you can't get shorter rod ends on there, you probably need new links, shorter links. So get your drive line angles right first. Since these are ready to go, we're moving on. I'm going to remove that because it's binding. It's not good. So you can see, I mean, that's pretty sweet setup this car has. So I'm going to do the rear first because it's just a wham bam thank you ma'am setup on this chassis. So the reason you wanted to wait to set your shocks up on this is what if you would have set these shock mounts and you're like in here, you're all bound up, like wow, that really sucks that you gotta do all that, or you know, in here and like you're stuck. It's just like, how would you have guessed that your stuff would have lined up in there? So what you want to do, the rear is super simple. What I try to do is I try to make it so these rear links, I try to make them at least center to the axle tube. That's exaggerated, extremely exaggerated, or above. I just don't like them like this because you're losing a ton of ground clearance in the back. So ideally, pretty close to center, maybe a touch above center line is where I like to put these shock mounts. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push them in. Yep. And then hopefully you can see this, but this chassis is super sweet to set up because all I'm doing is I'm just going to put them right in there, just right where that shock mount or the shock rod end is going to hit that truss. I don't want it to hit. Cycle your suspension a couple times, right? Make sure it doesn't hit. And that's where I'm going to put it. So you could, if you wanted to, you can move them out here if you want more angle. You can move them all the way back here if you want. You could take this screw, you could put it up here. Just figure out where you want all your stuff to be before you set these link mounts, because that's the beauty of these link mounts, is it lets you put them wherever you want. So since I know this angle is good for my links, and then I like everything else, I like where the shocks is at, that's where I'm going to set this. So another thing to think about, this chassis kind of did it to me. Can you see? You probably see in here, especially because that one's far out. Or that's better. But you'll bind up a little bit here on the skid on both sides. So you can avoid that with some bent links. You can also get in there with a Dremel and clear that out a little bit. But keep that in mind too when you're setting these links. These axles will have somewhat light, well, they are wide link mounts, but they will work good. You just got to make sure your chassis is ready to clear that. So if this were my chassis and I was building this, I would take a Dremel a little bit there, or I would just put more bend in my links. I'd probably just grind the chassis. It's not that big of a deal where that skid's at. Let's grind that out. But something to consider when you're setting those shock mounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in here and I'm going to put that shock rod end right where I want it. And then right when it's right there and it's free from binding, I'm going to drill a hole right where this shock mount has a little divot right there. I'm going to put one right there, and on the other side I'm going to come in here where it's somewhat thick, and I'm going to go right there. Remember that your shafts are still in there. So you don't want to drill the china. After you get your set screw in there, to make sure everything spins good still. Let's move to the bottom. Same thing, you just want those flush. You don't want them deeper, you don't want them proud. You just want them flush and they're the perfect length. So in my opinion, this is actually so easy because now I can just come over here, and since they're so close to the truss, man, it's just easy just to eyeball. And I'm pushed all the way against the truss, so you don't have to measure the width difference. You just got to get your angle correct on the shock mount. And like I said, since it's so close to the truss, it's like you can tell exactly where those shock rod ends are. So this chassis makes this rear axle just a gimme. So easy to set up. If I could have done a build on these axles after installing a couple of them, it would have been a lot easier too. That's it, man. Rear axle's done. Give it a little flex check. Dialed. Let's get that front done. So you're going to do the same thing in here. You got to figure out where things like to be. So me, personally, I'm going to run it just like my Berg. I like these all the way out to the chubs. Then I don't have to measure my width. And I already know the only problem with that is you're turning. you don't want to turn into your links, right, and have your tires eat up your links. I just said this is the same I run on my Berg, so I already know that this width is good to go. There's nothing wrong with that width. So all I got to do is I got to check the angle of my shock and my link mounts. And the only thing that's kind of getting in my way could be this servo post. So I think what I'd do is I'd just trim this servo post down a little bit. But I mean, it's going to get into that rod in a little bit. So I will trim that down, but let me check everything out first. And so let's just say I did send you these shock mounts and they were all sloppy like this. Here's how we fix that, just so you can get everything mocked up. Just drill your holes where they should be. Not going into aluminum here, obviously, because we haven't set anything yet. All I'm doing is I'm putting these holes in here. I'm going to drive these set screws in. Until these link mounts are tight. And they'll stay there while I mock it up. And if I'd have thought about it, I'd have done that while I was messing around with bolting everything up too. Okay, so now that I've done that, my shocks and everything are going to stay while I can cycle it. And actually, my link mount, or my links, nor my shocks get into that servo mount. And if I were you guys are going to be building this. I'm not really building this car to be ready to run kind of thing. But I would mount my servo right now. And I just flex it out. See, it's close in there, but it's not touching. So I'm not worried about it. So what that means I'm going to set this truss. I'm going to finish this up. Get this thing stable. So it's the same thing on the rear, right? You can tell when you're off. So center it. Center it, drill it, and actually I'm going to pull that, I'm going to pull this shaft out. Pull those shafts out, and then I don't have to worry about drilling into them. I still haven't done this truss spacer down there, but I got the rod ends and all that stuff in the way. So I'm just going to I'm just going to do this one. And then I'll take those links off and I'll do that. So this is not a monster amount of threads in this one. So this is a 6mm screw with Loctite because I don't want this thing coming loose. Let's double check that servo mount again. It's darn close. And I can rotate up a little bit too. Or you know, you can put bent rod ends on here. And that would give you a ton of clearance. So you've got options. One other thing I forgot to mention too is, again, we're wide here. And you can see I'm not battling this skid plate like I am on the rear. And that's because I just put bends into these links. Bends are the easy way to go. If you order just regular sucker punch links from me, they don't have this extra bend. So I need you to ask for that, or just tell me you're running these axles and I'll know what to do. So we've got that done. We've got to drill our shock mounts real quick. So now that I've cycled it, I can tell that's good. I'm actually going to mess with this side. Oh, that was good where it was at. I'm going to mess with it just a little bit. Oh yeah, see, I just moved it just a hair, just a little bit, and I've got a lifetime more clearance. I like that a lot, actually. Make sure your servo's in there. It's clearing everything good. So I'm actually going to do the front just like I did the rear. I'm going to put these shock mount nuts, well, that side's not going to do it since I don't have the truss there, but I'm going to put that shock mount nut right there, right into it. And then everything else is pretty close, but man, it looks good. That'll be a super easy way to figure these axles out. Just put that nut right up there into that truss. Make sure you're all the way out to the chub. I mean, I could assemble these axles all day long without even putting them on the car, since it's like that. So easy. These are going to need to be tapped. So drill the hole through the shock mount. Stupid thing. So drill through the shock mount and the tube, and then tap it. Obviously you didn't have to tap it back because it was Delrin. Since this is aluminum, you gotta do it. So drive that screw in there. I'll probably actually throw a little Loctite on there. Just as soon as I set this one. I need 3 drills. 4 drills. I need one with a drill, one with a tap, and then 2 with each type of driver. take a look down there, see if it's going to hold up on your shaft. Don't want to put your set screws in so deep that it hits the shaft, right? You can look down your tube. You can see, make sure that that set screw didn't go into it. So now this other side will be the hardest, if you want to call it the hardest, because you're gonna have to figure out your angles. You're gonna have to match it to the other side. But the way I do that, I don't think I'm gonna be able to show you on camera. The way I do that is I look at it from this point of view. You guys can't see anything, but they're way off. You can look at it this way. I look at it from every single direction. I look at it 50 times. Make sure I'm on. And then I'll go for it. Like I said in many of my videos, your eyeballs are actually very, very correct. They're pretty accurate. More than people give them credit for. So look at them. If you're not used to this, which you probably aren't, just set them where you think they go. Go have lunch or dinner or something. Take a nap. Come back and look at it. Take a nap. Look at it. Look at it. You know, look at it a couple times. Take your time. Then once you feel confident, just dial it in. I think it's just a trust thing. I've done this so many times. Get your Loctite. And look down the tube. And that's where it is. We're almost there. We just got to do chubs. Chubs and maybe some steering. Pretty good, pretty good. You know, and you got options too. You know, you could move these shocks up here, you can move them on the outside, you can move stuff around. If you don't like my idea of pushing them all the way out to the chub, you got room to bring them in. You know, it's just going to start fighting the servo. But you can also bring them in all the way and then put it on the other side, and it would be pretty close to where you're at. It changes things a little differently. There's some options. Check them out. You know, this car is yours, so you need to build it the way you want it. We're going to put the chubs back on. The shafts back in. Hopefully without any resistance. blow out those tubes. Looks like I got some stuff in there. Not gonna kill anything, but looks like I got my set screws a little too deep. Yep. Slid right in after I did that. I put these knuckles back on. Probably have to take them back out because you gotta drill for those chubs again, or you gotta for the first time, whatever. You gotta drill for the chubs, but I don't want to drill the shafts, so I'm just gonna mark it. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Sometimes you gotta take that risk, man. Drill those chubs. So let's just twist this tie rod out of the way right now, make it a big bumper. And then what we're going to want to do, where's my phone? Okay, so there's an app. There's an app, it's called Angle Meter. This is what it looks like. So I'm going to set these. So I set my phone on it like this and it tells me the degree I'm at. So I set it right on top. And hey, I'm super lucky. That's what I want right there. I'm shooting for 18 degrees. I personally don't want as much on my MOA because these things count on steering. I think if you're talking about capability wise, I think we do 20-25 degrees of caster. But in sporty, where you got to turn and you're relying on that turning, I think I'm gonna set these to like 18. You know, it's to be figured out. I think you might even want to go to 0, ideally, but you know, it's give and take. So we're gonna do 18 though, and I'm gonna drill at the back of this slot, and then in the front of this slot, and that'll stop it from rotating. I'll explain that in a second. Since I'm not pulling my shafts, I'm going to be careful how deep I drill. I think that's it. So, how am I going to do this? I think I'm just going to leave that, since I already know where the hole's at. Come over here. I'm going to go 18. Right there. I'm going to pull my shafts and I'll finish. before I drill those other holes, I'm going to finish these. Where's my tap? Okay, so I'm actually going to go back to my baggie, remember? 5 mil. So we are going to go set these 5 mil. So my chubs moved, which is fine, because I know I was already all the way back. So I'm all the way back, so now all I gotta do is rotate those all the way up and hold them. Okay, so I'm all the way back on the slots there, and so I'm gonna go all the way up on these slots. So the reason for that is it can't rotate, because if I put them, so let's see, it'll twist this way. So I actually want to go back to this one. If I go back to this slot, then you can't twist it this way, you can't twist it that way. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. So I'm going to go all the way to the back. The other thing that'll do is if you do want to rotate these chubs, you can take this screw out or the other screw out, and you can turn it the little bit that you want to turn, and you'll have more opportunities to make holes. So you can make multiple holes all the way around there if you do that way. If you put them in the center, now you just kind of made it hard to put more holes in there, if that makes sense. Get all the crap out of the tubes. And then let's just put these screws in. We're almost there. Done. Shafts in. Come on. So obviously if you're doing the Loctite on these kingpins, make sure you wait until you're finally done. Alright. Sure everything's cleared. So the thing with this tie rod is a lot of people when they install it just want to go bow, and then they have like this big old bumper. Twist that sucker all the way back. Make that thing ride against the truss. You get way better steering that way. However, there's a catch. You're going to bind right here with your rod ends and your steering arms. So I'm going to take my tie rod off and I'm going to go clearance those real quick. Alright, I forgot to show you, when you take that tie rod off, it kind of gets confusing, because you'll be like, where am I supposed to grind? So look where it hits, take a little magic marker, and mark it. And then you don't have to do so much grinding. Take it over there and know right where you got to be. Alright, be right back. Alright, so I just ground right there. I don't know if you can tell what it used to look like. You probably see yours. But just bevel that out a little bit. And I'll show you how that really helps the steering. I don't think that nut likes that anymore. Or the screw. Might be the screw. It's weird. It doesn't want to come off the rod end. Oh yeah, she messed up. Okay, so now when you steer, you get to ride along this truss and it's bind free. It's not even coming close to touching that. You want to pay attention too. I got lucky because I didn't pay attention this time, but the shock mounts right here can touch these rod ends. Not a huge deal. I ended up being perfect, but not a big deal. But if it does touch, you might have to grind the shock mount a little bit to get full steering. I think that's it. That's all there is to it. Everything looks set. So put that servo in there. And then, you know, attach your drag link. This one would probably have to go to the top because when you steer all the way over, see how your drag link can get into that thing. So you just have to figure that out. Hopefully you can come underneath. You can even shorten this thing up a little bit. This thing, I made it pretty long. I could tighten those rod ends up. So there's some stuff you still need to do. I'm at full compression and these links clear that servo. Yours might not. You can get bent links, put a little bend in those. There's P-shaped rod ends that I sell. You can get those. You can see on the back here I use these bent links because that gives better clearance. You can do bent links back here too. There's a lot of things you can do. So hopefully that helped though. That should be it. Oh, don't forget that screw down in that truss. I'm going to grab that right now when I take this axle apart. But don't forget your screw down in that truss.